Yes. Hey, this is Jenny. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. I got you.
Okay, thank you.
How is it on that end, Jenny? Is it clear?
I can hear you clear. Yeah, I think because
I,
you're talking in the microphone.
yeah, okay,
And me as well.
Yes,
cool.
thank
Test,
you.
test. Better than before?
Yeah, I mean, it's great. Yeah, it's very clear. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. You can't even have like a footstool under there. There's not even room for like a footstool because of that connector thing. Yeah. Minimal snoring.
dangerously.
Letting you sit up front? What's
Has anyone heard Councilwoman?
Yeah, we checked in with her. She's on.
She's on, she's good.
Yeah, I've heard that.
She wanted me to make sure we weren't. She was on the
I
screen.
yeah, thanks. I can hear you, Tiffany.
I'm gonna make sure if we go to attendee that we don't. Okay. I think we're good. We should not.
Probably.
Okay. Ready when? Well, I have 5 on my watch, 5 on my phone.
The regularly scheduled council meeting for March 24th, 2026 will come to order. Tiffany, please take the roll.
Councilman Harjo,
Present.
Councilwoman Workala,
Present.
Councilman McCarthy,
Present.
Councilman Sanders,
Present.
Mayor Sykes.
Majority being present, a quorum established. We will move on with the agenda. Before we start the agenda, are there any last-minute changes or amendments to the agenda? If so, please state the reason and the nature of the change.
Council President.
Councilman Harjo.
At the recommendation of staff, we'd like to remove consent agenda item number 6.
When we get to that part of the order, we'll take that up.
I think you should have to sit in that chair.
I didn't bring enough Lysol. That's right. I've had family that has not been well this week. I don't want to make it any worse for anybody by location or anything else. So remind me of that, Councilman Harjo, when we get to the consent agenda. We'll certainly make that move. Any others? Moving ahead then to recognizing persons in the audience. Purpose of the agenda item is to provide an opportunity for members of the public to address the city council on matters that are not listed on the current agenda and are within the subject matter jurisdiction and municipal purview of the city. Comments may not involve personnel matters, legal disputes, or the private, non-municipal affairs of the constituency. Comments regarding zoning or land use issues may only be made during a properly noticed public hearings. And we will ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Is there anyone who would like to come up and speak before the council?
I'm not used to all this stuff. I have a property I want to build a privacy fence. Well, they told me I needed to be here. I had Hank come out and Eric come out, but they didn't understand what I'm talking about because I'm not very good at explaining things. I'm an oral.
Yep.
Chris.
Okay.
I have a question that specifically say things that are addressed on the agenda we shouldn't comment on. Will I have an opportunity to talk about those? You discussed it.
This is the period for public comment. If you would like to make comment, if it's an item that's on our agenda,
So,
because I've asked about having that changed multiple times.
it is, but that is changed. Now it's appropriate,
Okay.
according to what you just read off. So if you are going to be opening up comment for that, which I doubt you are, then if he does want to be able to say something about it, it would be during public
Public
comment.
comment.
So it's appropriate for Ted to, if he
Yeah.
wants to, because he won't have an opportunity, he won't have a venue, like, this rationale behind it.
We can't get it done in 3 minutes, but I'll do my best.
You've never gotten anything done in 3 minutes.
Ted Thompson. I just received a copy of an email that the mayor sent to you all and to Mr. Hoag and Ms. Bell. There are significant things, significant problems with that. First of all, he says that when I was managing, there were numerous safety and compliance issues that went unaddressed. In a deposition, under oath, Mayor Sykes said that I had done nothing wrong at the airport when he was specifically asked. So where's the truth? Were there things that he didn't admit to there or now? What specifically is he referring to there? There are no specifics. Questions my motives. My motives are to have a safe operating environment at the Mountain Home Airport. Nothing else. I was asked by 2 of you here to stay involved in the airport specifically because of my experience. I've tried to do that, tried to point out things that we could improve. The letter suggests that you should ask the legal team what my motives are. How would they know my motives other than by observing what I'm doing here? One of those on the legal team was one who asked me to stay involved. It's very, very disappointing to see this. Saying that I want to change the frequency personally. And my associates are in the same way. Well, one of my associates is that Tom Mahoney, who's the director of the Aeronautics Division of the Idaho State Transportation Department, the state's recognized expert. He has no legal authority to tell the airport to change its frequency. He has said that, and he told that to the council here. It's his recommendation based on his responsibility for safe operations, aviation operations in Idaho. He said that himself. I'm not disgruntled that the airport's running well. I'm disgruntled that the airport is not running well. On Sunday, the specific email that I sent to you all that generated the mayor's email, that was a concern that could have been handled better, simply by notifying pilots that an ongoing operation that would have an impact on their safety wasn't made available to those pilots until they're already in the air and potentially at risk of encountering that situation. A simple NOTAM, somebody on a radio saying, you don't want to fly because we're chasing elk around on the airport. That was the purpose of that email, is to say we could have done that better. So deactivating the weather station is a positive step. There are lots of other sources now to get that kind of weather, that advisory kind of weather. At some time in the future, when there's funding, perhaps can get a weather station that is certified. But that didn't solve all the problem on the frequency congestion. Problem is too many airplanes using this frequency, and that number is increasing particularly when you got a helicopter school within 15 miles that's flying a lot here. So this letter is accusing me of being disgruntled. In the sense it's true, because I'm disgruntled that the airport is not safer to operate in. We don't have a better business environment. We don't have a better environment for customer support. The airport website says that some customers can use the terminal facility. What's the definition of some? Who is that? I buy gas.
I'm going to ask you to sum up your remarks.
Other people buy gas. They can't get inside the terminal building. Instead, they have to go outside to an outhouse that frankly is not well maintained.
Hello. Ian Morcott. I was the former chair of the Airport Advisory Committee. I'm in a sort of a unique position of, I lived on an airport for 20 years in California and went through a frequency change. And I can tell you that a couple of things. I used to fly into Palo Alto all the time, and there is no place in the valley where the air traffic is such that if you wait a minute, you can get your communications in without a problem. If you like flew into Palo Alto or wanted to talk to Oakland Center, you had to be on your game to get your transmission in. You had to be listening to traffic, and when there was a gap, you had to jump in immediately and make your point. So I look at the air traffic here in the valley, and it's like I look at it. This is like this is a retirement home for airplanes, as opposed to bustling, hustling. Palo Alto had like 10 airplanes in the traffic pattern all the time, so there's just not very much traffic here. But when I was living in Groveland, Echo 45 was Quebec 68, but Echo 45, the close airport was Oscar 22, which was Columbia, which is about 8 miles away, not very far. It was overlapping airspaces, and they separated the two frequencies. The problem is that you had people flying from the Palo Alto area and the LA area into the two different airports, and it basically formed an X. So when they changed the frequencies, if I was coming into Echo 45, which is Pine Mountain Lake Airport, I wouldn't hear people reporting 10 miles out, 5 miles out, going into Oscar 22, which is the adjacent airport. So separating the frequencies, yes, it reduces the congestion, but then you're not hearing what you should be hearing. Because if I was like flying from Palo Alto into Groveland, I would want to hear that somebody was flying like over Stockton, flying into Columbia, and because I knew then that I need to be looking for traffic coming from the right, crossing to my left. Just changing the frequencies out so everybody's on a separate frequency doesn't necessarily make it a safer operation, is what my point is. And ultimately, if you go and listen to 122.8 on a Saturday when it's busiest, right, because everybody's off on the weekends, you won't have much traffic. You just won't hear much traffic. It's like if there's a congestion, it's the odd day, not the normal. So I don't think it's a good idea to change the frequencies. 2 points.
Yep.
Thank you.
My name is Reese Stickles. I am a certified flight instructor. I fly helicopters, and I have about 200 hours on the frequency 122.8, which is our frequency that we have right now. I believe that it would be a bad decision to change the frequency because if we look back in history, Gooding changed their frequency they have some bigger jets that come in, so they just wanted to change their frequency. This led to 2 accidents because of this. So that is one reason why I believe that it is a hazard to change the frequency. Yes, you get a NOTAM, you can check your NOTAMs, but the issue with that is if you have a guy flying from Gooding to Mountain Home 2 to 3 times a week, he's not going to go on to there if it's like clockwork. So, for instance, if you guys are flying, or let's say you're driving from Boise to here every single day, you don't see that maybe the speed limit sign changes, right? So you get pulled over. Yes, that is on you. So that would be pilot error if we didn't check it. But at the same time, it happens, right? Another issue, or another reason why I think it's a bad thing to change it. I have low hour students that are completely fine making radio calls. At about 5 hours of flight time, we push them to try to make those radio calls, and they have no issues with them. So I'd say, I think that it would be more of a hazard to change that frequency because of issues with collision, and it's not really necessary because we have pilots with low hours being completely fine making those radio calls.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak this evening? All right, then, we'll move on. Conflict of interest declarations. Any council member received information pertaining to or otherwise had any contact with any person regarding any items on this city council's agenda? If so, please set forth the nature of the contact.
Council President.
Councilman Harjo.
I had a discussion with TJ Gomez on Friday, Jared Lemieux today, and Terry Manduca yesterday.
Council President,
Councilman Brennan.
I had received an email from Will Marshall, Reese Steckles, and Ted Thompson regarding new business number 4, and I also had a conversation with Terry Manduca regarding golf course.
Council President,
Councilman Workala.
I received an email from Tom Mahoney with ITD, Will Marshall, Reese Stickles, and Ted Thompson regarding, is it new business number 3 or 4 on the airport?
And for the purpose of the declaration, I also received the email from Councilman Workala on this topic, along with on the airport, Will Marshall, Kyle Rieger, Reese Stickles, Ted Thompson.
Council President.
Councilman McCarthy.
I also had the email. I apologize, forgot that. So I'd like to add that.
Okay. Any other? Moving on then to the consent agenda, we've had a request to move item number 6 to new business.
Council President.
Harjo.
The request was to remove the topic altogether at staff's recommendation. There's still some steps in the administrative side before we present that to council.
Keep your request to retire tonight. Get back to us.
Council has been a request to remove item number 6 completely from the consent agenda. Without objection, it's so ordered.
Council President.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda, removing item number 6 completely off the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing no call for discussion, I'll call for the question. Councilman Harjo.
Aye.
Councilwoman Workala.
Aye.
Councilman McCarthy.
Aye.
Councilman Sanders votes aye. Moving ahead then to old business, item number 1, approval of the acceptance of the minutes for the regular city council meeting of February 24th, 2026.
Council President,
Councilman McCarthy.
I'd asked on the last meeting to pull these just to have a final review, as there was quite a bit of content in there. Chatted with staff to see, question regarding if this were AI generated or if they were actually hand done by staff. So I appreciate that. With that being said, I will move to make a motion, or I will motion to approve acceptance of minutes, regular city council meeting, February 24th, 2026.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the question. Councilwoman Workala.
Aye.
Councilman McCarthy.
Aye.
Councilman Harjo.
Aye.
Councilman Sanders votes aye. Moving on to item number 2, approval and acceptance of the minutes of the Special Planning and Zoning Commission minutes, February 24, 2026. Councilman McCarthy.
Again, since the same, just wanted to have thorough review on them. So I will make a motion for approval of acceptance of minutes, Special Planning and Zoning Commission minutes, February 24th, 2026.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Councilman Sanders. Aye. Councilman McCarthy.
Aye.
Councilwoman Workala.
Aye.
Councilman Harjo.
Aye.
Moving on then to items removed, new business. We had no items removed from the consent agenda that we're going to talk about this evening. So down to number 2, non-action item discussion item regarding Nate Fowler with NJF Holding LLC regarding airport hangar row B, lot 9.
Good evening, council. Thank you. I did send a packet. If you haven't had a chance to read that, I do have an extra one. I'm going to try not to go verbatim, and in order for me to stay on track and focused, I've written out a little. I do have one extra here. So my name is Nate Fowler, and I am a leaseholder for Hangar 9 Row B at the Mountain Home Airport. I'm asking for conditional approval. I at least believe that's what it would be, is conditional approval to split my existing leasehold back into 2 lots and move forward with exploring construction of a second private hangar. Right now, the lot that I lease is 26,700 square feet, which is significantly larger than the surrounding parcels and roughly 3 to 4 times the size of a typical lease. And historically, this was actually 2 separate lots prior to 2008. And so the area out front of the hangar was kept open for helicopter operations associated with life flight, because that's what this hangar was purchased for. That use is no longer there. That use was there for about 5 years after it was built. So I think it was 2012 that was no longer used there. And today that space is just underutilized. So the goal here is really just to bring the parcel back into alignment with the rest of the airport, more standardized lot sizing, and make productive use of the ground that I'm already leasing anyway. So this is a request for conditional approval, and that simply allows me to move forward with surveying, engineering, and evaluating the feasibility before I come back for a final proposal. There's no obligation of the city, no commitment required, unless and until everything pencils out and returns back to the council for that approval. From my perspective, it's a low impact, low risk opportunity to the city to support additional private investment at the airport, increase hangar capacity, and better utilize the existing ground without expanding the footprint that I already have. So I do appreciate your consideration, and I'm open for questions.
Council have any questions?
Council President.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Councilman Harjo.
I'll defer to Councilwoman Workala first.
Okay. Councilwoman Workala, go ahead.
Hi, sorry I'm here remote. So are there any negative impacts to the city of Mountain Home for doing this? Anything with the septic?
So the negative impacts, I guess I would have to have someone come up with the negative impacts, but since I'm requesting to do this and I would be paying for all of it, that would be part of my surveying and engineering because those are things that I don't quite know yet. So that would where the conditional approval comes from, because I spoke with JJ Howard, with Eric Howard about surveying. I've spoke with JUB. I spoke with CDC specifically about septic, and really they don't want to do anything either. So until I have conditional approval, it's at least been brought before the council with the concept, then that kind of allows them to even dig into the concept with me. So how the details would look as far as what might happen, and to answer your question, Councilman, I don't even know about what that is. So if we really dug into this after some conditional approval where it gave me a little more right for them to even start looking at the engineering and what that might be, we very well might get into it. And then we say, this is cost limiting. It's just, this is going to be an issue. If we move this here, then that becomes an issue. So at this point, my preliminary conversations with all three of these folks has been the exact same answer, which is it does not look like a big deal. It doesn't look like a problem. Of course, that's face value. But in order for me to even move forward to really uncover that, I'm requesting that at least it's not brand new to the council when I do come back for approval.
So is your meeting tonight with us, is it just for information only? I know it's a non-action item, but is your plan to go forward with those engineering groups and gather that information and then submit an actual proposal for us to vote on? Is that the goal here?
Yeah, Councilman, that's 100% accurate, because if I'm going to be spending the money, which quite frankly, to do engineering, surveying, all these types of things that one kind of rely on another, I just wanted to come first before the council. Like I said, that it's not a surprise that down the road, after I've written some pretty decent checks, that then the council might have questions or thoughts that I didn't know or wasn't aware of. And then now we're backtracking after expenses have already gone out. So even if at that point, if they did say, hey, everything looks good, I write the check, now we bring back a package for final approval, I'm hoping to avoid a surprise of perhaps the council denying or having disapproval of something rather than having a conversation now, just to bring everyone.
So from my perspective is I would actually, before I could ever say you got my support or not, I would have to see that from the engineering and surveying firms, what their response is. So that I just want to give you a heads up. That's where I stand.
I've got a question for Paul. When there's talk about the location of septic drain fields, are we getting the question closer to land use as opposed to the mere construction inside an existing building? If so, does that take on more of the structure of going through a plat change?
I'm gonna say yes.
In which cases might be referred to P and Z.
Well, let me, I have about 3 comments, and Councilwoman Worklow spot on what she just said. And because, and I totally understand from your perspective, like, good grief, I don't want to expend this money if it's going to be dead on arrival. There's no such thing as a conditional approval. A conditional approval is not a condition of approval, which is a legal term. Conditional approval does not have a legal mechanism. It's like being a little bit pregnant. You're not. You either are or you aren't. It's either approved or not. And in fact, if this was a land use hearing, a conditional approval would violate due process, because you can't, the public and you and them get to all view an application, and you can't say you sort of approve it beforehand. So in furtherance of answering my question, which now does tie back to Curtis, we're the landlord, correct? This is our land. but this is nonetheless please help me out on how these lots are situated. Is this a subdivision? Is this, is he asking for a formal lot split?
It would be.
Yeah.
The lot is identified by the lease as a single lot, so it would technically be a request to split a single.
Yeah, so the lease is actually besides the point. What we're really talking about here is septic and everything else, is a land use application for a lot split. And I understand what you're doing. Were this truly a land use application, I wouldn't even allow this to get first dibs on saying something to the council going, this is gonna be okay with you before the public gets a chance to have a say in this, since this is a non-action item, it's not a public hearing and all of that. But I get it. You wanna know going, look, so to split, or to sit on the knife's edge, I'm going to say, and you're gonna nod yes, aren't you? That you're asking in the proprietary function as the landlord, not as the arbiter in a public hearing over a lot split, right?
I think
That's when
correct.
you say yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So from a proprietary standpoint, we as a landlord get to say, no, 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 we like our land the way it is, we're not going to do that. And that would be giving him informal feedback, or, yeah, we're fine with that, it makes sense, I understand why it was split in the first place, or combined in the first place. So you're speaking, today, I'm okay with it in your proprietary function as the landlord on what you want to do with your property. But if it's something where you're like, you're okay with that as the landlord, then you, as an applicant in a true land use application, which is for a formal lot split, which planning and zoning gets to have a say on, and now you're dealing with the septic, and you're dealing with all, whatever is involved with the lot split, that's important. And then you could have quote unquote conditions of approval,
Mm-hmm.
which would govern the approval of that lot split, right? You have to have this number of square feet, you have to provide this. The setbacks for between the two buildings have to be whatever. You know, whatever all those things that matter, fire suppression, all these things. And that's when all of that would come to light. But today, it would be improper to truly discuss this lot split, because that's what I deem it. But in your, again, sitting on that knife's edge, in your I cannot say that word, in your proprietary capacity as a landlord, you guys are ultimately saying, no, you're our tenant, and no, we're not gonna, cut the building in half or whatever. So you can give some feedback as to that, and then set it, and then put that, but no, this is not a conditional approval. This city council, or let's say you're slow on the up, in doing this, and it's 3 years later, and it's in a different city council and a different mayor and all that, they may turn it down. And so there's no such thing as a conditional approval, but we as a landlord might be open to the idea. But until, as Councilwoman Workala said, until we see what this really is entailed, i.e. you expending that money somewhat at a risk, and it's true, to say this is gonna not work, or this will work. And that's the plight of public hearings, and that's the plight of land use application. Any developer, you never quite know what's gonna happen. Clear as mud.
Council President.
Yes, Cliff.
It's also worth noting where the current hangar sits on the concrete slab. The current hangar has the bathroom facilities that require the septic. The septic is on the other side of the concrete. So the septic and the drain field, although we don't know exactly where they are, we do know that they're geographically separated from that, just to make sure full disclosure.
Yeah, and that was something that I was already going to bring forth, is I knew that was going to have to move, because that would have to be attached to the lot that the current hangar is on. So, but that sounds like it would go to the P&Z style application. So I totally understand that, I'm aware of it, and I did get that scope, so I'm aware of where the drain field currently runs. The offsets and all the details of that, though, were all generalities based on kind of what I already said, as far as anyone can only give generalities at the current time.
Council President.
Councilman Harjo.
Just for everybody's edification here, some passages out of the contract. Under Section 5, construction of a hangar, the lessee shall not construct a hangar until the plans, specifications, and color scheme for said hangar and the location thereof have been approved by the city's Director of Public Works or engineer, building official, and the city council. Any hangar constructed on the demised premises shall comply with all the federal, state, local requirements, including the then current version of the International Building Code as adopted by the city of Mountain Home. Lessee shall not make any alterations to the hangar to be constructed by him without first obtaining the consent of the city's Director of Public Works or engineer, building official, and council. I think that lays out pretty clearly for us that there are some more formal requirement of action, and as well being this fairly unique scenario, I would fully agree with Councilwoman Workala about getting an understanding from our engineer on what this entails. And there is unfortunately cost involved in that. And I don't know that that's, I don't even not know. I know full well that that's not the burden of the cities to bear at that part. So just for everybody's edification.
Any further questions or discussion from the council?
Council President.
Councilman McCarthy.
I understand the situation this is, where it seems of trying to somewhat approval for moving a condition or looking at seeing, I think as you said, the support. I think I would have to probably agree with Councilwoman Workala and Councilman Harjo that I think it's there needs to be a little bit more formality to it. I feel this is on a very, as I'll use Paul's language, on a knife's edge. And so I think it's one of those of trying to go through the formality, I think, so.
If you haven't caught on yet, there's no action to be taken on this tonight. It's an exchange of information. I would encourage you to get with the folks in Public Works and let them have the scope of what you're trying to accomplish, what you think you may need to do, and use their guidance on how about best to proceed and weigh whether or not there is risk and reward for you and to what level you are interested in pursuing it.
Council President.
Councilman McCarthy.
A question for legal. This turn into potentially an ex parte situation if this did go through P&Z and come through this board later down the line?
Oh, I understand what you're saying. So no, not ex parte. But you're on the right track as far as the laundry list of due process things in municipal government. No, what it would be accused of later would be predetermination and or bias. So not exactly ex parte, because ex parte means you're doing something on the side. That's why they say, have you had any conversations? Ex parte contact. So there hasn't been any ex parte contact. But the worry would be is going, yeah, we're good with a lot split and all those things without knowing anything, and then later realizing we can't do this because of the whatever, all those different issues. So no, more of the concern is you impermissibly, outside of the context of a public hearing, predetermine the outcome. So it's predetermination is your issue. But applicants always have, I mean, you hope that staff know how this body will act in most occurrences, and you can get enormous feedback from, let's say, Public Works. And when you're outlining it all, and your engineer or whatever is working with Chris, And Chris goes, this is not, we're gonna be recommending denial to the city council. And there are certainly are exceptions where the city council acts contrary to what staff's recommendation is. It does happen. But normally it's gonna be like, okay, well, if our experts that work here at the city are all okay with this, you know, for the most part, we're gonna be like, okay, it makes sense. You know, whereas if you get, and there's no such thing as ex parte contact or predetermination or bias or any of that when you're discussing these things with staff. And so that's, he can get a lot of his answers about the feasibility of this occurring. You know, what I was gonna allow them to do was just basically like, no, as a landlord, we're not changing anything, don't waste your money. And that's that, as the landlord. But the proper course is, if the city council's open to it, which I think I'm hearing them say, but we need to see information. That's where it stops. And then you get with staff, and you could do as much as you can without expending money and talking frankly to staff on what they either know or know, but at some point, yeah, it'll cost money to get there.
Council. So for my understanding, and so for my course of action would be speaking direct with Chris then. So that's my first step, is for having that communication, go over all those details. So now my question for Chris and the council is, as far as information that I know that it came up with JUB, well, JUB is a contract of the city. So then JUB said, I can't talk with you because I'm on contract. Well, then I was told by Chris, talk to an engineer. But yet when it comes to engineers wanting to have conversations, I didn't really know where to go. And that's not a fault of Chris. That's not a fault. It was just the line of communications is probably what kind of brought me here to this point of going, okay, so where do I start as far as like the process goes? So now I feel like there's clarity. So now my understanding is, if and when I do talk with Chris, it's at some level there's going to have to be just shared communication as far as that goes. But that was my main question, is what resources would be given to me then, you know, as a hangar owner currently and a partner. I would consider it a partner, a leaseholder of the city. What information is allotted to me to be able to then approach and say, can I talk to that engineer? How do I talk to them, and who gives me the approval to talk to them?
The problem that we have is if we communicate with the engineer, the city is on the hook to pay the bill. We have to pay 100% of it.
So,
Go ahead, Paul.
so yeah, no, you don't just get to call up the city attorney or the city engineer to save you the cost of having your own engineer or attorney, let's say, and then just fire all the questions that you've ever asked him. And about that will. No,
Which would not be
you
the
know,
intention.
Yeah,
But
that obviously is not permissible because we work for the city, not for you, but you're a citizen. And so you get to have the resources of the city, i.e. staff, not contract, outside contract counsel. So you're saying JUB is your engineer as well?
No, I'm just saying in our original first conversation, it was, you know, speak with the engineer. Well, then that happened to be JUB. Well, then in my conversation with Chris, it was like, well, hey, that's actually our engineer. So then to even seek the questions of clarity, I didn't know. So is that something that are those billable hours that could, or once you have the contract, it has to be a separate engineer completely asking questions?
That is a decision for them to answer, but I know what they're going to say, which is, for them, it would be a conflict of interest.
They already said that.
And so if your engineer happens to be also the city's engineer, yeah, you're kind of stuck. It's kind of like, you know, and it happens all the time, even with me, where somebody wants to hire me. I'm like, technically, I'm on the other side. Sorry, kind of thing. And I mean, it happens. You know, I mean, it's like dating in high school in a small town. You never quite break up. You just lose your place in line. Well, you got to find another engineer that's on that, you know, in line that could help you facilitate what Chris is going to need to hear in order to say, okay, this is going to work, or no, you haven't thought these things through. And then Chris might need to consult with our engineer,
Mm-hmm.
which is our engineer at that point,
Okay.
about the concerns that the city has.
Council President.
Councilman Harjo.
In one of the correspondence between city staff and Mr. Fowler, there are a couple passages in here that I think are also key to this discussion. I'll pick up in the middle here. Further, all improvements, including septic systems, associated facilities, must remain within the premises and remain the responsibility to install, maintain, modify, or relocate in compliance with applicable law and the terms of the lease agreement. There's a memorandum referenced earlier in the letter, and this in response to that. Your memorandum also references a 2008 airport layout plan. While the city acknowledges the existence of that plan, it's not a governing or controlling document for purposes of administering the current ground lease and has no bearing on the interpretation or enforcement of the executed lease agreement. Furthermore, the referenced ALP illustrates multiple potential taxiway configurations. Your memorandum selectively cites one conceptual option that supports your stated position. However, the city does not intend to pursue the and does not recognize it as a basis for any current or future lease consideration. Those as well, I think there's been a significant amount of staff time and effort put into this. If as Council President Sanders mentions, if it's your choice to move forward and seek your own engineer, come up with the drawings, present those to staff and the council and make that a formality, I mean, that's the risk versus reward that you're going to have to weigh. Based on the input that we have now, the lease, those are big terms to weigh.
Councilman. So specifically in that line, so when it talks about the ALP, the reason that the ALP was even noted in there is because I thought that that was the current ALP that we were operating under. So that's why that even happened, because I didn't, when the ALP was updated in 2011, I was under the impression as it was drawn by JUB, which is what I got by public record, was a drawn map of that taxiway. So that is what I was thinking was the reason, is because the taxiway was drawn there. So it was just a surprise to me to hear in that actually was not the plan and that there would be no taxiway going there. Because to be quite honest, that made it more appealing to me in a sense, because then I wouldn't have to deal with some of the offsets that potential taxiway was going to be, even though I fully expressed being open and willing to work with that taxiway. In fact, my whole concept was originally to do this to make it more accessible, because my lot currently, as you could see through the drawing that I attached, that taxiway goes directly through it. So that note of information is what also changed a little bit of my request, is okay, well, now that we don't even have to worry about that taxiway, so now that's not going to be an expense or something to think about. That makes this potentially even cleaner when there's not a taxiway there. And just to reiterate to the councils, I was never asking for any funding or any money from the city in order to do this project. It has all literally been, how do I make this lot, this bare dirt, to be quite honest, it's sagebrush, just the most utilized property? Because I mean, really, that's what we want, is we want aviation use. And when you have 27,000 square feet and 16,000 of it being sagebrush, now that I found out there wasn't a taxiway, that made it even more like, okay, well then let's, there's potential to clean this whole thing up. So I do appreciate that. And yes, I'm willing to take on that risk. And there again, it wouldn't be something where I would be asking for the funding. This would be making my leased lots cleaner and more valuable to me for the next 20 years. Because I mean, I just bought this hangar. I'm local to Mountain Home. The last companies that own the hangar and the lots, one of them's not even in the state, one of them's not even in this town. I'm not going anywhere. So really, I do look at it as a long-term investment partnership with the whole city, where I wouldn't have brought it here in the first place.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Fowler, thank you for your
Yes,
time.
thank you.
Moving to action item number 3, action item deliberation and decision regarding the Golf Course Advisory Committee. Councilwoman Workla.
Yes, hi. No, just from I think y'all know where I stand on this from previous conversations we had, and especially from our last special meeting. This committee is needed. So I'm gonna just keep it short and simple. I support it. I guess the only thing I may have questions on is for maybe TIF or legal. How does this, if this does get approved tonight, how does this get advertised out to the community, and then and how does it move forward?
Council President, Councilwoman Merkel, I believe we would just advertise it. I believe we would just advertise it as we would any others through social media and the website. I would have to look back at the existing committee that was in place and put on hiatus, and potentially those members want to come back.
So, and then the advertisement goes out, and then the mayor, is he the one that would pick them and then bring them to council for approval like any other committee? Is that the process?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Council President.
Councilman McCarthy.
I have a question on that too. Will there be a application, I guess, that will be devised for this similar to what the DIFAC was done?
Council President.
Matt, go ahead.
Council McCarthy, we can do that. The advisories previously haven't had that kind of until recently, so.
Council President.
Councilman McCarthy.
I just wanted to ask for clarification. I wanted to ask the mayor for that, to see if that is, since that, to my knowledge, the application was a newer process. So I didn't know if this is something we, or I should say, if it was looking into for this at Golf Advisory Committee or any further committees filling any vacancies, any of that such. So thank you, Tiffany. Sorry to put you on the hot spot.
Council President.
Councilman Harjo.
We've obviously had some turnover since on the council since this was last discussed. Just to bring up some points of consideration, should a golf advisory committee be formed, the council and the potential committee members, I think there's a need to have an understanding that a golf advisory committee does not have legislative authority through Idaho code to affect a budget. There is no line authority over any staff member or contractor. And those are terms that on our agenda tonight, we have new business action item number 4 regarding frequency concerns at the airport, and a comparative. The Airport Advisory Committee had deliberated that topic for well over a year before it came as not a recommendation, but a push forward of the topic to the mayor and staff without decision, leaving that decision strictly to the council. I'll say now what I said then. I think a golf advisory committee is a heartfelt idea. There is implied value to that, to having golfers provide feedback about the course that they play on regularly. However, in terms of what the intention may be and what in practice it had become 10 or so years ago when that was dissolved by Mayor Rist, or put on hiatus rather, the same issues that I mentioned now were in existence then. And I think that's kind of, unfortunately, the natural mindset is that there's going to be some authority over personnel or budget, and that's simply not supported by law.
Point taken. On this, let me also state that that concern may be most properly addressed in the process of establishing the new council if one should be voted forward. That there's clear understanding as new members are reviewed and brought on what the limits are for such a gathering and what extent they may provide advice on given areas. Much like Councilwoman Workala, my thought on this has been pretty well known already. That has not changed. We are, in this instance, making plans about an amenity that is not performed as well as we would like in the past. And at the same time, we're doing it with a constituency that we absolutely must have working with us for any plan we come up with to work. In that regard, nothing about them without them is my stance on this particular issue.
Mr. President,
Councilman McCarthy.
I wanted to bring up regarding the, say, legality for Idaho code when it comes to the advisory committee for golf course. Can understand those concerns, but I go back to Mountain Home Ordinance 2-2-1, where it actually has created advisory committees. We have our airport advisory committee. There was a Parks and Recreations committee. There was a golf course committee and traffic safety committee. So while I understand that the basis of this, looking at Idaho code, I have to come back to, we have the city ordinances that have these committees, or the option for these committees, we'll say. And it is no secret, I am not a golf expert, and I will not claim to be a golf expert. However, I see value in the committees for, well, I'll just read the 2-2-2 duties and responsibilities, which is similar to the airport committee. Golf course committee, the golf course committee shall have the duty and responsibility to suggest and make recommendations to the mayor, council, golf professional, and golf course superintendent concerning the development, use, and management of the municipal golf course. And so while I don't see this as something that is, I'll say, established like a development impact fee advisory committee, which is by Idaho code, I see the value in this as an advisory committee to come and suggest ways that we can be looking at the golf course to improve, but also looking at how we're going to, I'll say, mitigate financial cost. And so with that, I will say that I am in much of a golf course committee, and yeah, I will leave it at that. So.
Council President.
Councilwoman Workala.
I also want to point out I'm not against committees. I want to point out with the Air Force Advisory Committee, they came to us because they had two opposing views on the frequency change. And they finally said, council, you decide. We will point out the
Councilwoman
pros.
Workala.
Yes.
Just want to make sure you're not getting crossed up. We're still talking
I'm-
about just the golf course. We have another action item
Oh.
coming up concerning frequency. I don't want to get the two intertwined to where we're mixing different action items.
So why didn't you stop Councilman Harjo when he brought up the Air Force Advisory Committee?
Because he wasn't going to it into the depth you were going into it, and I was becoming concerned.
I'll wait.
Any further discussion?
Council President.
Councilman Harjo.
Feedback is good. In all instances, pro or con, feedback is good. I think my question in a manner of this where we do have another agenda item regarding golf course staffing structure and operational budget on our agenda tonight. The golf course has, for lack of a better term, been in management turmoil for the last 3+ years. The feedback coming from that last 3 years is valuable and consistent. Not opposed to a committee in this sense. My question is it going to hold the value that's interpreted, especially in the context of, as it's been stated, we build a golf course committee, we have that committee provide those recommendations. We're already moving on a series of topics on this agenda, let alone to come agendas regarding potential purchases and so on behind this upcoming agenda item. So as wheels are already moving, say that golf course committee doesn't get formed for 2-3 months, right? By the time we've published and recruited, we're looking at a point where even their feedback will kind of at best, in regard to our action as a council with the budget, may not even have a voice until April or May of next year, which would have an effect on the budget that gets instated and activated on October 1 of next year. So again, to set the expectation, should this go through, great, but that its influence on day one, unfortunately, might be kind of stifled by the fact of our cadence and need to solidify a budget in the coming months, and that could mean that our budget gets formed before they get formed as a committee. So, just to set some expectation upon creation there.
Okay, council, anything further?
Council President.
Councilwoman Workala.
I would like to make a motion to establish a golf advisory committee. Tiffany, real quick, how much time do you need on that to get that advertisement out? Because I want to put a date on it.
If I need to generate an application and kind of what the duties would entail of the advisory committee, I'm probably looking at next week.
So if I say 1 week out in my motion?
I need to look at my calendar. I have some days full of interviews, so
2
bear
weeks
with-
out be better?
bear with me here.
Okay.
It's hard to believe. Can we make it, how about the 9th of April?
Yes, ma'am.
It may be sooner, so.
Okay. So in my motion, I'd like to make a motion to establish a golf advisory committee by the 9th of April.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion?
Council President,
I
think we might be misaligned on our understanding of what that date entails and how much
about to bring that up
work
myself.
is entailed to create a committee in the next 2 weeks. I think we're just having a misalignment of understanding there. Councilwoman Worklow, like, I definitely see the push to get the thing done. I think the understanding is that 2 weeks is not achievable to form the committee in its entirety, but 2 weeks to create the posting and start accepting applications.
Council President.
Councilwoman Workala.
Okay, I just want to tell you where I stand. I might not vote the way you want me to vote on number 5 then. I guess we did pull that. No, was not. Yeah. No, on number 5 for the golf course staffing structure and operating budget that you spent so much time on there, Council and Sanders. I was all for it, but part of me feels like I need a committee to help drive that. I want to hear from the committee. So I told you at the special meeting I was very supportive of number 5. But if this committee is going to be pushed out for months, then maybe I'll change my mind on that one.
Councilwoman Workla,
Yep.
is it your understanding that the date you have is when you want to see this committee fully staffed?
I want the advertisement to be out by then to for people to apply.
So if I understand you correctly, what I just heard you say was you want the application form and the notice for folks to apply and submit done by the 9th. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Council President.
Councilman McCarthy.
That was my understanding too, and I just want to ask Tiffany, the 9th, is that feasible with getting application and everything?
Council President,
Tiffany.
Councilman McCarthy, Councilwoman Workla, yes. On the staff level, we can have everything out no later than the 9th. My goal would be to get it out sooner. The 9th would be the very last day. All of the members that apply for the committee that are selected would come back before the body to be appointed to their spot.
Council President.
Councilman McCarthy.
Yeah, thank you, Tiffany. That's how I understood Councilwoman Workla's motion. Councilwoman Workla, please correct me, I guess, if I'm wrong, but I was taking that your motion was to have the application out and that advertisement by April 9th.
Correct.
Okay. Paul, do I need to have her restate the motion for clarity?
Yeah.
Councilman Workla, with that information discussed, would you please restate your motion for clarity?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to establish a golf advisory committee and have city staff put the advertisement out no later than April 9th.
Second.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. We already had a standing second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Councilman McCarthy.
Aye.
Councilman Harjo.
Aye.
Councilman Workla.
Aye.
Councilman Sanders votes aye. Moving on to action item number 4, deliberation discussion regarding the frequency concerns at the airport. Councilwoman Workla.
Yes, thank you. So stand by 1 second. Pulling up my notes. So I did send an email out to council. I'm sorry if you didn't have time to read it. I just was able to check it today and then forward it on to Tiffany to forward on to you. I'm actually going to take the time to read it just for the citizens to hear regarding the Gooding, because the Gooding incident is mentioned in here that keeps getting brought up. So this is from Tom Mahoney. He's the administrator, the Division of Aeronautics with the Idaho Transportation Department. So I reached out to him wanting to know his thoughts on some things, because I was mentioning before on the previous topic item is that a committee's good because there can be opposing views, which is always excellent, right? And so the airport advisory committee could not come to 100% agreement on terms of moving forward if they wanted a frequency change or not. So they proposed pros and cons and then left it for council. The previous council voted, it was I think a split vote, and the mayor did the split vote and decided not to change it. I brought it back on discussion to see if prior council or the new council would be interested in looking at this again. So when we got this on the agenda, we've heard from the aviation community, and as you know, we've received emails for it and against it, of changing the freak. So I reached out again to Mr. Tom Mahoney with Idaho Transportation Department. This is what he said. Thank you for reaching out to ask for my thoughts. Your experience with Western Air Defense Sector is relevant and highlights 14 CFR 91.103. The regulation requires pilots to become familiar with all available information. This includes NOTAMs and data from published charts, supplements, and databases. Changing the frequency would have the new frequency reflected on all of these. Excuse me. While adopting a new permanent frequency is not a common occurrence, in my experience, a pilot in flight can safely change frequencies. Example, Coeur d'Alene uses one or more frequencies while the temporary tower is open, and yet another frequency when the tower is closed. I flew there twice this week and used all the frequencies. Another relevant example occurred at the Caldwell Airport. In late 2021, Caldwell changed frequencies due to congestion. For reference, here is the city's resolution, so I hope you guys had time to review that. A NOTAM was published. There have been no accidents associated with the frequency change. I am curious about two major accidents at the Gooding Airport. I searched the NTSB database going back 50 years and could not find any accidents at Gooding associated with radio communication. I also spoke with Tom Dell, the Gooding Airport manager, who confirmed there have been no accidents at Gooding associated with radio frequencies. The Gooding Airport frequency has not changed. As an aeronautic safety steward, I believe changing the frequency at Mountain Home will result in less congested communications at the Mountain Home Airport and benefit other airports using the same frequency in southwestern Idaho. Moving weather information to a different frequency will help to a lesser degree. Okay, so that again, that came from Mr. Mahoney. And then, excuse me. Another thing I want to point out is that I keep hearing we're not busy. But council, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're trying to grow our airport, right? We're trying to extend our runway. We're trying to grow our airport. We're trying to bring industry into town. And to do that, it would create more congestion 5-10 years down the road, right? So to me, it just makes sense to change the frequency now while there isn't as much congestion. Then when we do grow throughout the years, it's already established and we're not changing it 5 years down the road when we really do need to change it. Here's the other thing I'm concerned with is that because there's so many split, it's not just, again, one person in the audience there. I know that everyone's thinking of that saying this. We've received emails and correspondence with other aviators that say, yes, a frequency change is needed. So with that being said, Tom Mahoney is the only state agency that has the credentials that has reached out to us as council recommending us to change this. So let's say we don't take his advice and recommendation. There is an air collision. Welcome to a lawsuit is what I'm looking at through the city, is because we have advice from the state agency saying to change it and we ignored that advice. Okay. On the flip side, in my same email to Mr. Mahoney, I said, people are very concerned though, if we change it, if someone doesn't read the daily NOTAMs and they don't realize that, that the frequency did change, and then there's a collision as well, right? So I understand that point of view as well. But again, when I sent this email out, my experience of working at Western Air Defense Sector, we had temporary flight restrictions put up all the time wherever POTUS was. Super busy with that. And we had that all the time where there was a certain nautical mile that was restricted wherever POTUS was at. Someone didn't read the daily NOTAMs, went up, busted that restricted airspace. Then we had to scramble our jets from PDX and they had to go and respond, right? And so it just, again, pretty much 100% of the time, it wasn't someone trying to do something nefarious. It was just a pilot that didn't do their due diligence like they should have. So just with many years of that experience, I feel like we should really consider Mr. Mahoney's advice and point of view. Thank you.
Council President.
Councilman Harjo.
I talked to Public Works Director Chris Curtis earlier as I came in the building, and he had provided some info that Mr. Hogue has been in contact and Chris Curtis has been in contact. The FAA is currently doing a study on U-76 about this very topic. I can't speak to that as well as these two gentlemen can, so like, please feel free. Uh, Given this information, like, I'd really like to hear from our experts on this thing.
Good day. How's it?
Sorry. I lean back.
Just wanted to post this. I'm not trying to, I'm just give out raw data. So what I did is I reached out to the FAA, which is the reviewing authority for all aviation concerns. As soon as something leaves the ground, it becomes their matter. So I reached out to the Northwest Mountain Region, the airport district office about this issue, Mountain Home, if they would have be able to provide us with any information. They escalated it all the way up to the FAA Spectrum Engineering Office. That manages all frequency spectrums resources to provide a safe and the most efficient airspace system in the world is their full source and task. They currently have documentation and data to provide us that their legal is reviewing, and they're going to try to get it to us this week. I just wanted to get, and that's a non-biased opinion of the airspace and the frequency. Everything else that we've heard so far has been opinions from one group or another. Everybody seems to pitch up on this, but this would be from the FAA directly on the frequency, the usage of the frequency, and what their recommendation is. I think it would be the right thing to do to see what that information is before any judgment is put out.
Council President.
Councilman Harjo, or McCarthy.
I'll put the name tag. Can you let me know, who did you speak with on the FAA?
Yeah, it was the communications manager out of the, I think it's out of Helena. I think that's where the ADO is.
Communications
Director.
Director?
Yeah, they have somebody specifically there. Sky Lauren.
That was the contact to you?
Yes.
Sky Lauren?
I went through a whole chain of chain of links, the FSDO, the ACO, this ACO, to continue going to try to figure it out. I tried to call directly to the Spectrum, but I don't know I don't know if there's a government shutdown or whatever.
When did you, sorry, Council President.
Go ahead.
When did you reach out to them?
This was when this all came back up after that first meeting, because when Councilwoman Workala brought it back up for discussion.
So last city council meeting?
Yes.
Is there any time frame given when we might see that report?
This week.
This week.
Council President.
Councilman Harjo.
That being said, one of the big driving factors of the previous council's decision on this very topic was that when asked of both our ITD representative, of our airport advisory committee, of our airport manager, of our airport engineer, there was no citable report data at that time. This seems to be the first instance that we will have citable report data, and it just happens to be from the utmost governing body over aviation. I'm prepared. I'm going to make a motion that we table this until the following meeting, pending feedback from the FAA, so we have tangible reporting in front of us.
We have a motion to table this item pending the presentation of the FAA's report.
Council President.
Councilman McCarthy.
I have a few more questions before we get to this. So I appreciate you coming, Tom.
Sure.
I know that you were on the email that was sent from the mayor. Regarding the, I guess we'll say, regarding past, I'll just put it that way. It was encouraged to reach out to you and see the airport and that. And I guess for me, the email, I think, was a little bit, I'll just say, inappropriate, especially towards the end, where, being thrown out to go out for an airplane. And I know that wasn't directly for you, but that was in the email. So that's why I hadn't reached out, and that's why I'm glad you're here tonight so that we can have this discussion in the public. Regarding this frequency change, to me, I think going back, and I will kind of reiterate Councilwoman Werkela's point on this is where I see value in the advisory committees. The airport committee, I had gone through the city council meeting in October of last year, where we had this presentation, and I have the presentation up that gives the pros and cons of this frequency change. And I guess it seems to me that this scenario is kind of boiling down to the pros of reducing possible congestion, and then the con is the adaptation. And so for me, it's, I know that the airport committee had talked about there's financial implications with changing the frequency for changing the sign and everything. And I think that all wraps into that adaptation. So that's why when I'm hearing this or going through this packet or this presentation, to me, it seems it's really coming down to the potential for reducing congestion, because we are in between two, Ontario and Gooding, Jerome, we're getting the chatter, correct? Is that what's been, I'll say that's what's been presented, I think, in the past is the big piece.
Okay.
And so to me, there seems to be a safety concern, and this might address that safety concern. And then I hear there's this adaptation with the safety concern of if we change the frequency. But I guess I'm always coming back to when I hear of there's always this risk if we change the frequency that we're going to have mid-air collisions and everything. I guess help me try to understand where, to me, this seems that this is a responsibility of the pilot when it comes to if we change the frequency, that they have to go through their, help me here with your expertise, with their dailies when they're getting ready for flights and everything, to see all their records and that.
9 hours yesterday, California and back to Sun Valley, back to California, back. Flew this morning, right? So I fly a lot.
So again, it's coming back to that adaptation, but the responsibility of the pilot, right? And I'm trying to figure out is how.
So, can I
Please,
interrupt?
yes, please.
So, and I don't want to get into it because I really want this data. Whether we change or we don't change, I'd like it to be supported through data, right? Not through an opinion. So for one, and it's interesting because I hear all these opinions and I don't hear any data or facts about the frequency that is used in the FAA. There's a specific reason why the FAA uses a certain frequency. And there's been comments made about the frequency of how it does certain things, how it clogs up the airway. It is specifically designed not to do what some people are saying. So that's the first data point for me that caught my attention. So, for instance, everything's amplitude modulation. Are you familiar with that? Well, I'm not going to sit here and do a whole electronics class on it, but that's what the FAA uses, and it's specifically used for safety. And so it has certain characteristics for safety of why they use it, and it's also part of the reason why they use certain frequencies at different airports. And so at my level, or anybody's level that doesn't understand that, it just becomes an opinion and not facts of why it is what it is or why change it. The council, not an individual here in Mountain Home, chose the frequency for the Unicom at Mountain Home. The FAA did. And there's a safety implications with that. So I think, on my end, I'm looking for the data to support it. Make sure that it is a safe decision.
Council President.
Councilwoman Workala.
No, thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. So did you say the FAA will get that information by the next city council meeting?
Oh yeah, wait, I'll distribute it as soon as I get it. I was kind of hoping to get it, but they're also busy.
So I think we're 3 weeks out how the calendar cycles before our next meeting. So if we make a motion to table this, I think Scott did, or sorry, Councilman Harjo did, make a motion to table this until we get the information. Councilman Harjo, did you make a motion on that for the next meeting?
Council President.
Councilman Harjo.
Yes, Councilwoman Workla, the motion was to table until the next meeting, in hopes that we will get that information in our hands between now and then.
And then Council President?
Councilwoman Workla.
Councilman Harjo, would you still be good with keeping it as an action item?
Oh, yes.
Okay. I will second that motion.
We have a motion and a second to table this action item until the next council meeting and the presentation of the report from the FAA. Before I call for the question, I'm going to get my chance to speak for just a second on this topic. This is one of the things that, as a city council person, I was anticipating, and it was not the first I've had come up. It will not be the last, where this council as a body is often asked to make a decision where the experts cannot, because of differing views on the given topic. Everyone that gets into an aircraft, in my opinion, is an expert. Anyone that gets into it and tries to fly it without is either a movie star or they're insane, because there is no greater risk to self or persons, in my mind, than trying to navigate an aircraft. That being said, I also know that delay sometimes is more dangerous as charging ahead. I'm looking forward to seeing the FAA's report. Most importantly, I'm going to be looking to see what data they use to come to their conclusions, because we've had a lot of data given to us by local reporters who are measuring locally. And data is not information. It takes someone to be able to properly interpret that data to turn it into usable information. You hand me a string of COBOL, I could not decipher it. Doesn't mean I might not know what COBOL is. And it's programming, by the way, for those of you that haven't used computers in a while. So I'm in support of tabling this until we get the report in, and I'm most concerned to see how the FAA got its data points and whether or not they used any information that was collected locally in their assessment. So with that said, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Councilwoman Workla.
Aye.
Councilman McCarthy.
Aye.
Councilman Harjo.
Aye.
Councilman Sanders votes aye. Motion is tabled.
Thanks, Tom.
I think we're down to number 5. Action item deliberation discussion regarding the golf course staffing structure and operational budget. Councilman Harjo, since you provided us with some information, would you like to take lead?
Council President, yes. At our special, we covered a lot of ground, obviously. The proposal as it stands, we had a lot of spot discussion, and after time to reflect on a lot of those, this afternoon I decided to modify an old presentation that got us to the, I guess what you could consider the current contract that's being resigned from, and a lot of the mindset of the decision that led to that contract kind of carries forward to the current. So bear with me one sec. I'll share my screen. Get this puppy open. There we go. Share window. Okay. Originally, I'd used this format to discuss with the council, mayor, and staff regarding TJ Gomez's current contract that put him in a position to continue his teaching and merchandising with exclusivity for the last year. Now that TJ is resigning effective April 20th, if I remember correctly, and having received the information from the special meeting, there's some highlights to the plan that I'm hoping to stoke some discussion out of. The contents of this presentation: purpose, current issues, 2025 lessons learned, revenue generation, what's not our business, proposal issues, and a summary. Again, to encourage thorough consideration of the role of local governance. Quite frankly, I should put that at the top because that's my purpose for this discussion. Obviously, while we all have the desire to improve course operations, to maintain that we're good stewards of taxpayer dollar and limit the financial liability to the taxpayer. Highlight a staffing plan effort as a positive. I think that was the greatest takeaway of the special meeting. Note citywide staffing effects, revenue and expense balance, and build revenue from the logical streams we already have. One of the talking points that was brought up was that our rounds are down, but over the two comparative years of 24 and 25 seasons, the rounds were down 2,000 rounds for 25, but the revenue actually increased over that time period. In our current issues, there is a hefty taxpayer burden for the golf course operations, and it's at an all-time high. I believe we're missing logical revenue opportunities. Trail fees, what I would consider misuse of an unlimited pass for greens fees and cart storage, and tournament fees. Expense versus revenue. Expense clearly outweighs the revenue, or else we would not be in the position we are and talking about this to the extent that we are. City's reporting needs are unmet in my eyes. At the point where we were discussing this contract and looking at instating the golf operations manager as it sits today, my biggest request was we need more data out of our Zen program. We are absolutely capable of capturing how many individual golfers as a user there are. So we have a comparative of the concentration in the context of, did this user buy a season pass? Did this user not buy a season pass and bought 20 rounds of golf? There's a layer of data that can be found behind those metrics collected, and we are certainly capable of doing those things. Staffing issues. Support for the current staff at the course is lower than what I would have expected as a council person. Our current staff has bumped into issues where a full-timer has worked in excess of 30 days straight due to the constraints of hiring and staff turnover. There are a few key takeaways from that quite honestly, the proposed staffing model in terms of headcount may address. The hours of operation are unsustainable for one full-time employee during peak months, as we've seen in the 2025 season, and again, as it pertains to the budgeting and this council's role in setting the budget that allows for a particular amount of headcount. The volatility of the golf course and the timing of our budget cycle are rarely in phase. So we're at a disadvantage in terms of making logical decisions about a budget at a point in which we've already missed the window to make changes to a budget. And again, I think we're coming at this on the tail of midstream, because any budgetary choice that we make here in the coming months will not have an effect until October 1st. 2025 lessons learned. The city must maintain logical revenue streams. As we acquired the carts at 100%, the greens fees at 100%, trail fees, We had some expense behind those in the lease for the carts. Reporting and metrics are critical. The data that we do have is very valuable, and the data we don't have is even more valuable. Golf fees overhaul is necessary, in my opinion. We have, again, a revenue versus expense imbalance. The proposal finds a solution in taking on more expense and more risk for the potential of finding revenue, where I do believe that we have revenue potential built in currently that we're not utilizing in addressing golf fees, as well as I've said before, our expense and monitoring what that expense is. Staffing plan is absolutely needed. Again, that was my big takeaway from the special meeting, is that that mayor, staff, and council see that what is the head count that is currently there is not sustainable. Golf niche retail is not a city business, in my opinion. We have one potential here to take on a retail business that puts the city in direct competition with private commerce in the retail space. I do not believe that that is the role of city governance. I don't believe that that is good shepherding of taxpayer dollar. The number that was stated at the time was anywhere from $50,000 to $75,000 of initial investment on the city's part to stock a golf pro shop just upon startup. Lessons and pro shop sales are private commerce. We have experienced in the past where instances of a blended approach where we have a golf pro on contract who has exclusivity, and in the process of that, we were also doing revenue sharing, and that revenue sharing in and of itself muddied a lot of waters, made reporting very difficult, incurred significant cost on the city's part by processing all credit card fees at the same point of sale for what logically is the city's in the operation of greens fees in conjunction with sales of merchandise. And that has been identified and corrected more and more over the years. But what I don't want to see is us slip backwards into the knowns that did not work for either party. Revenue generation, this slide is taken directly from my presentation about creating the golf ops manager role. The city wholly retains all collected fees and management of golf cart rentals, driving range, greens fees, trail fees, cart storage, rental clubs, and tournament coordination. This is the City of Mountain Home's municipal course. A golf pro, especially as we've known it for the past 10 plus years, has been a revenue generator and had those revenue streams that were exclusive to the golf pro, and succeeded much more when those revenue streams were cleanly divided and did not have a revenue share. What I believe is not our business. Taxpayers should not fund niche retail endeavors. Golf clubs, golf bags, golf apparel, golf shoes, designer sunglasses, and rangefinders all come at a significant cost, even at wholesale, to acquire, let alone if our desire is to buy TJ out of his pro shop stock and merchandise now, which in talking with him on Friday at length, he is interested. He mentioned that the Decker, you and him had a conversation roughly a week and a half, 2 weeks ago on this. That merchandise would be at a rate that is higher than what our cost to acquire and build a relationship with a supplier would be. And we're buying it closer to retail and not closer to wholesale. Again, I believe that taxpayer funding should not be spent on these things. And the comparatives that come to mind are, we have many other city facilities like our rodeo grounds. Are we going to start stocking chaps and horse equipment in a store to sell there? I'm a race car driver. That racetrack exists on city property. Are we going to start selling G60 Hoosiers and spark plugs and race fuel? Probably not, because those are not within the scope of what local governance should be adopting as a business. Issues with the proposal as I see it now, this proposal adds headcount. This plan adds significant headcount to the golf course, while department heads and supervisors across all departments are nearly barred from adding headcount in the upcoming budget season. Mayor Sykes sent out an email the following morning after our special meeting. Here's some copies of that for the council. The following morning after our special meeting that reads as follows. Please meet with me if you're planning to request additional staff or new hires. As a reminder, all requests should remain within your allocated budget. Once all submissions have been received, we'll review where everything stands and determine whether any additional requests can be accommodated. Please also keep in mind that adding positions may impact other departments. Any such changes would require group agreement in ELT, otherwise those requests will not be approved by me. Thank you for your cooperation. In this proposal, we are adding headcount, and that will affect other staff and will affect other departments. And I ask how that's equitable to other city services that taxpayers fund. Contingent expenses. At our special meeting, it was stated that this was seeking the approval of hiring a golf pro as staff as proposed, and showed a staffing model that showed hiring a pro, hiring a clubhouse assistant, 3 seasonal full-timers at approximately 8 months. That is an increase in headcount. Potentially hundreds of thousands of additional taxpayer funds needed to fulfill behind that particular request. We have 50 to 75,000 in retail golf merch as an initial capital expense. This, again, was not budgeted for in the budget that we're working within currently. 1 or more simulators have been discussed to go into the training center. Those run anywhere in the average of about 20,000 each for commercial units, plus install costs. Increase in staff headcount and fringe expense over the current model. There was a great staffing model in that presentation, but it is not a business plan. The retail concept did not accompany an honest business plan, although we'll be fully adopting a business line. No revenue model or profit margin examples have been presented, just conjecture. And at that, I will mention that our golf ops manager did create a pile of information, because I went and talked with Jeff this week. And Jeff provided me this folder full of information. And there are really specific instances of what profits margins look like, what our historics have been as a golf course, because at one point there was a shared point of sale system that shows the number of units moved per item and gets very specific about the revenue, the cost of goods, and the profit margin to those pieces. So while the data exists, we were not presenting that, and it was not a factor of our previous discussion at the special meeting, regardless of the fact that data was presented and ready for consumption, which harkens back to the support of our current city staff. No revenue model or profit margin examples have been presented, and no merch model or scope has been defined in relation to the initial capital outlay. It's my belief that the current fees do not meet the revenue needs of this golf course. Revenue increases can be made through reasonable fee increases, looking at greens, trails, storage, tournaments. These things need honest evaluation in comparative to our market and other nearby golfing facilities. Annual pass applied to tournaments and leagues is a leader in revenue loss to the city. We've experienced this in the past and had multiple meetings about this, where annual passes apply for your tournament entry and your league entry. It's my belief that that is not appropriate. Other golf courses around our community follow that same model and say this is not appropriate, and they've actualized increased revenue with that simple change. cart annual passes while the city pays $50,000 annually to lease the carts exists in a space that's problematic to me, as well as what is not noted here. We have no policy, and I think I mentioned this before, we have no policy that allows us to recoup funds from somebody who willfully damages carts at our course, carts that we still pay for. Similar courses in the region do not offer season passes. That has been exampled several times. Expense reduction. This plan had no plan to reduce expenditures. Historic headcount increases and annual transfer increases are notable. Overall expense growth is not mitigated by this proposal, and this course has seen, as I've confirmed today, the only contingency expenditures for the last 2 years have gone to golf and no other department. In summary, it's important to respect and preserve the most important aspects of each: good shepherding of taxpayer dollar, city operation revenue streams that logically belong to the city, and a staffing model that produces and promotes a healthy work and life balance. And with that, I will stand for questions.
Council President,
Councilwoman Workla.
Councilman Harjo, in 1 minute, can you sum that up, what you want to do moving forward?
Council President.
Councilman Harjo.
My response here does not build in a plan. If I were to answer that question candidly and in short fashion, the city does not belong in the retail business. And a lot of this plan revolves around hoping for the revenue from that retail business and placing that in parallel to the decision to hire a golf pro in-house on staff. My desire is to explore all options. There are concepts of going back to a more traditional golf pro contract, an agreement that would place us in contract with a golf pro with a contract salary or not. For context, TJ's last contract here, he received no compensation from the city, but had exclusivity to exercise his hustle in the golf pro shop and the realm of lessons and the simulator. I don't have an answer for the plan today, but what I see are glaring issues in the plan as proposed. But to show that our options in front of us are to go in a drastic direction or maintain a status quo for more than 1 year. And maintaining a status quo might look something akin to, we do not have custom golf clubs and shoes available to our golfers in a pro shop. There are possibilities beyond that. I mentioned earlier that I talked to Jared Lemieux. He has interest in obtaining a contract for the golf pro shop. Not saying that that's the answer, but that is a possibility, and we have not discussed that whatsoever yet. That in and of itself would limit our liability because we would have no capital expenditure for merchandise. Those responsibilities and staffing for that pro shop would fall to that hypothetical contractor in that case. And there's a lot of intricacy behind how to get to a contract like that, including postings and RFPs and all the things. So that's not a today decision either. What I do disagree with is that this is a matter of urgent, dire straits that needs an answer today, because we do not have the full scope of what a business plan is. We don't have the full scope of how we get that statement of we're going to get the golf course solvent in 5 years. A staffing model is a portion of that, but it is not the entire business plan.
Council President?
Councilwoman Workla.
Councilman Harjo, are you on board though with going out and looking for a pro? At least that part of it?
Council President.
Councilman Harjo.
I am not fully opposed to the concept. What I am opposed to out of the proposal is that the city of Mountain Home absorb any liability in gaining retail business as a venture of the city of Mountain Home.
Council President.
Councilwoman Workla.
So yes, I agree with you. I don't think the city needs to be in the business of anything else like a pro shop. I said that the last meeting that we had. Though the concern was, yes, there would be a glaring hole when it comes to prizes, is what I was told. I did hear a little bit through the rumor mill that some tournament directors may be buying their own prizes because the pro shop isn't fully staffed, even with what they exactly want, because I hear the good stuff's going off the shelves even as we speak. So, and they didn't have a problem with that. I know that's not the answer, but it could be the answer for just this time, right? For today, for now, for this season, I guess. So again, I also, I cannot support us being in the business of a pro shop. I cannot. Again, it's the city, um, taking up work against the citizens. I know that's not the best way to say it, but we shouldn't be competing against local businesses, right? And that's what this is. So yes, if we either want to, I do believe though in getting a pro out there, right? So I don't think we'll be busy if we don't have a pro on staff. And again, what does that look like? If he needs to be a city employee, but then there's that concern that he may not, or she, sorry, may not get the extras, which you guys call the side hustle of like the lessons and the pro shop. Maybe that could be something that's done on his off time, weekends, nights, something to consider. So, I guess that's where I stand. Well, it's going to be a rocky transition because we're losing such a great setup with TJ, but yes, let's bring in, I think we need to get a pro. We need to put out an advertisement for a pro. And then he will come, or she will come to us and tell us, this is what I'm looking for, right? We really don't know until we get the advertisement out there. So I agree that needs to happen, but not being in the business of a pro shop. Thanks. That's all I got.
Council President.
Councilman Harjo.
Councilwoman Workla, quick follow-up question for you on that. Do you anticipate your concept of support for a pro as being under contract or as an employed member of city staff?
Council President.
Councilwoman Workla.
Thank you. I'm torn on that one. I mean, I hear things about Percy that will, if you put that out, they'll come. I guess, Councilman Harjo, what are you thinking?
I feel like there's pros and cons to both scenarios.
Right.
We have had at time measured success with a pro under contract. And on the inverse, we've seen configurations of pros on contract that have not been advantageous to both parties. And in that, the city of Mountain Home was not in the advantageous realm in full. I think there are pros to having that potential pro be a hired member of city staff. It introduces obviously the complications you mentioned about Percy and insurance, what this looks like in terms of the if there's a potential split. If the pro is hired on city staff, how does that pro then run a pro shop and that pro shop not be owned by the city of Mountain Home? That would be operating a private business on public ground by a public employee without, I mean, I'm going to mince the words, but it puts us in a position of really an uncomfortable space if there is a split on lessons or merchandise. Lessons, do those occur on city staff time? The staffing model showed, I want to say it was like 40 or 48 hours as the expectation. And would those lessons be on the city clock, where you'd be getting roughly $30 to $32 an hour, and then a potential for dozens of dollars an hour for your lesson time? And would those things occur simultaneously? That puts us all in an awkward spot. So that there are challenges to hiring a pro without tackling those and having those as known quantities at the time we approve it.
Council President.
Councilwoman Workla.
So you're like with what you're saying, if they were a city employee, it would take a bit of a more oversight, making sure that that person's clocking out at 5 and starting their private lessons at 5:01, right? Where I'm not trying to like say someone wouldn't have the integrity, but I mean, there is that shaky line. Let's say lessons start at 1:15 and then, right. I see what you're saying, right? There's all these, more policing, I guess, in a sense. So I would like to hear, I guess, from the other two council members how they feel about going out as for a pro as a contractor.
Council President,
Councilman McCarthy.
do you want to jump in on that, or?
Oh, I'm gonna have to say,
All right, I will get my words in real quick then.
but make sure to speak up so everybody can hear you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have to say that I am also have concerns about city getting in the retail business when it comes to the pro shop, especially using taxpayer dollars. I'm not in favor for that. I think I understand the need for a golf pro. I would be very much interested in the contract pathway, I will say, as I guess I'm just running through my head since our last special meeting, trying to what out is I don't see how, if this body so chose to have a city employee, but we have certain incentives that are built into it. I don't know where those lines, I think, how you would keep those boundaries. So I think it's, for me, one of those that, again, very much against the retail aspect of us trying to get in there. I understand there's a concern. I think Councilwoman Workala had brought up a potential solution that I think that could be looked into. I'm not saying it's the all it, but with current Jared, I think those are things that we can be looking at to help us get to budget. Because again, I can't be in favor of that. So, and city employee, I'm torn on that. But I think for me, at least, I would like to see more discussion on contract avenue when it comes to the pros and cons, rather than just this is the city avenue and we're going to add a city employee. So there's my quick. Council President has a few words. So
Thank you. Okay, folks, I will probably be rambling because I've written down a series of points, so bear with me, please. What the proposal that came before you at the special meeting had as a general theme was that the city would be controlling all aspects of the golf course. The golf course, we call it an amenity, but it is service driven, and that makes it user driven. And you can't tax your way out of debt. So your ability to control your revenue streams has a balance point somewhere in there where you start losing people playing because the price gets adjusted outside where they're comfortable. Please keep that in mind. I hope you can separate scope versus function. I know the scale of the notion of having a retail shop is quite high, but the function is no different than when we sell snacks at the swimming pool, which we already do. And as to the reference to the rodeo grounds, if there were people pulling up in trailers selling that same leather goods, I would see more clearly the point that was made. But the fact of the matter is, there is no other pro shop within 10.4 miles of this location. And even Walmart sells golf balls. So if you press that line of logic to its extreme, then we should not even be offering golf balls, tees, or gloves at the pro shop, which I find to be almost as difficult to accept as the other alternative. Please try to keep separate scope versus function. When the city controls all the aspects of a service like golf, all the revenue streams that generate off of it are logically belonging to the city. So lessons and the pro shop are no longer private commerce. Neither is the pro, who is a city employee. And it allows us to have the ability to set with certainty a point where all of our data that we've desperately been needing. And again, I've looked through some of the same data that you have, Councilman Harjo, and there are points on that data that are not logical. I'll just give you one example off the top of my head because it's the one that drove me the most nuts. $1 golf balls were sold, 87 of them, and they got $3. So when the data's looking a little iffy, it's hard sometimes to want to bring that forward, knowing there can be some holes there would have to take further study. I do believe that the prior history of this has the potential to do well. But if you have those items that we had under TJ's prior contract, for example, and we bring in another pro and give him a contract as good as the one we had when we first started with Mr. Gomez, then your streams for revenue reduce. And on the idea of contingency, right quick, while I'm thinking about that, yes, this council was going into contingency before this council became a council. Prior councils for years have had to do that. But what I've noticed in the last couple of years, and part of my push to make myself available for this position, I noticed a lot of those contingency funds were based upon maintenance that had been delayed. We were not proactive in the maintenance out there. And that was what was driving. Things were allowed to get to the point where either we had to take action or the prior council had to take action, or there was going to be dire consequences that were going to affect the ability to have a golf course at all. So if we're not looking at the golf operations, including how we're going to get ahead on the maintenance, which supposedly we're close to now thanks to the mayor's update on the pump, our control of the budget going forward is going to be problematic. Is it going to take an investment by the city to change to a city-operated, wholly city-controlled golf operation? Yes. It takes that investment in everything the city does. It's going to take an investment, whether it's wastewater or treatment or water pumps, you name it, it's going to be there. That's why I agree with Councilman Harjo and Councilman McCarthy and Councilman Workala in that as going forward, we need to make sure we're keeping appropriate data points and we're doing the due diligence to follow up. And if the direction we're going is not producing the result, have the courage to say so and take a different course. But before we can start the journey, we've got to have a course. So from my perspective right now, and I value every bit of this discussion, I would not want to do it otherwise. But it comes down basically to one of two choices in my mind at this point. Either the city steps up and takes total control of the golf course, or we go back out and we look for a pro who's willing to contract for all the quote unquote side hustles that go along with it. And we relegate ourselves to the funding streams that are currently available, which are the most user driven of anything. And we settle with what's left over. And right now, that could be writing six-figure checks out of contingency for the conceivable future. So we need to have that discussion. We need to go forward. Let me make one other quick caution as well. Being an old contract guy such as I am, if you choose to want to keep the merchandise out of the city's control, then I'm going to encourage you not to be talking about that with any potential future contractors so they don't have any insider information, because with a dollar amount involved, we will be going out for bid in that contract. And the very people we may have interest in doing it with a casual conversation might be spoiled from being able to place a legitimate bid. And with that, I'll get off my soapbox and I'll apologize to the audience for being up on it so long.
Council President.
Councilwoman Workala.
Yeah, very good point at the very end there. Yes, 100%. Good reminder. So you did mention Twin Falls has two golf courses that are privately owned. Why is that not being an option being pursued?
Councilman Workala, actually, they have one municipal course. There are two others in the town that are privately owned. And I'm not sure your question is whether or not the city's considering selling out the golf course to a private entity or not.
Again, apparently we're terrible at running a golf course when we're in the red this much for many years, right? So why isn't that discussion not coming out and talking about potentially selling it off?
From my perspective, I believe that if we are careful and we are taking a good look at the lessons the past is trying to present us, there is a way for the city to maintain not only ownership, but reasoned control of the golf operation, and it can be developed into a viable amenity that doesn't cost us at the rate we've been seeing it happen over the last several years. We saw an upward trend during this last contract holder's time. And then for whatever reason, the contract went south. I'm not privy to that backfill, but I know that that can work. I know that the city of Twin Falls contracted out the entire operations and maintenance to a single person. And in their, and they have very limited, the city then has only limited oversight over what happens in terms of the revenues being generated out of that. But even the Troon report that you got a copy of and there was a presentation of talked about the options of contracting out the entire operation to a third party.
Right.
That is, and a couple of different variations of that. And if we're looking at stuff and we take the time to go through and look at it, the question becomes, are we even attractive enough in our current state to warrant someone to come in and want to contract with us? To even take it over, do they see a potential for profits they're going to be willing to undertake the entire operation for? That's the business risk part. That certainly could be looked at.
Again, okay, thank you. I agree that it's a risk, but again, so is everything else that's been mentioned. We don't know. It's all speculation. So I'm just curious if other council members are interested in looking, having a third party come in and buy it out, or am I just a solo man on an island on that?
Council President.
Councilman Harjo.
I think I'm pretty vehemently opposed to the sale of the golf course. That puts us in a significant disadvantage for the community and access to what we would consider an amenity in a lot of senses. I think it was mentioned at the special meeting that the equivalent of that would be like selling off our water and wastewater utilities, and we as the town would be beholden to that private operator's expense and what their charges would be. On the note of comparatives, Council President Sanders, you'd mentioned that we can't tax our way out of debt, and I agree with you to an extent. These are user fees. The taxes are what we all pay in our property tax to have that as a community amenity and available, and that's the base of what funds we access to have that as an amenity in the community. The cost of doing business there is based on user fees. Doing some quick spot checking as I've been sitting here, the concept of that I presented about perhaps looking at raising fees just on this portion, which is weekend 9 and 18 rounds of golf. Mountain Home exists at roughly $33 and for 9 holes, $18 or 18 holes is $39. In comparison, Warm Springs Golf Course in Boise, their rate on that same weekend is $50 for 18 holes and $40 for 9 holes on the weekend. Quail Hollow, $55 for 18 holes and 9 holes being $43. So we're seeing other courses in our region, and those aren't the only ones. Ridgecrest and a couple others are also in that same realm of pricing. Kind of highlights that we have somewhere between we are behind somewhere by 20 to 25%, or maybe even more, on our competing full-size golf courses. I did not look at Mountain Home Air Force Base pricing. That just came to mind that one exists. I forgot. But in just the spot check here of that weekend example, the 9 and 18 rounds, I mean, we're 20, 25% behind the ball. So we can increase fees and still be below a market normal.
Councilman Harjo, thank you for that information, but this is a point of data, and to me, it brings up a point that may be inadvertently overlooked. Yes, is our rate lower? Yes, but please consider the difference between economy of scale versus the volume of use. Every course you mentioned is by a major metropolitan area with multiple completing golf courses and more golfers than they've got space to golf them on. We're not in that situation. We are a rural golf course. We have a limited number of users. And if we're not attentive to what there is, and I'm looking at, simply look at another way to look at this. Look at the median income in the Ada County area around Boise and those areas, and the median income around Mountain Home. If we're not being wise about how we set our rates, we're going to wind up undercutting the very people we need to be using that course. That's my concern.
Council President?
Councilman Harjo.
I fully hear that. Another perspective to build on top of that is we haven't even discussed what either a city resident or county resident, and clearly, like, county residents are not contributing in the tax base to this, but we could easily conceive in this moment of we have a $40 local rate for an 18 hole on a weekend. We've got a 45 for an Elmore County resident, and we've got a 55 for an Ada County resident. And those Ada County residents that want to golf at their more local courses but can't get a tee time, that's an opportunity for us to capitalize on the market need in that sense. So should we stay competitive in pricing and come in under those, but apply that, and again, this is where the individual user data would come in, because if that golfer was not a member, for instance, and they were a resident of Ada or Canyon County and coming out here to golf, sorry pal, you're gonna pay 10 more bucks to come golf at our course. And we're going to capitalize on that, and we're still going to be cheaper than everywhere else, and we're still going to have access to tee times that they might have a challenge getting up there. And those, again, I think highlight the opportunities that we haven't fleshed out at all, and this is all purely conceptual. But I do think that those topics deserve their day in the sun before committing to something that has this, we hire a golf pro, and then all of a sudden the cone of uncertainty starts from that point forward in expenditure and time frame and what portions of business the city's going to take on versus private commerce. Our one action in hiring a golf pro on staff opens that cone of uncertainty even farther, versus having some known quantities in. We contract with someone, we know the known rate, they provide the service, we don't have the exposure, taxpayers aren't funding niche retail. That's my mindset on it.
Council President.
Councilman McCarthy.
Okay. Well, back to Councilwoman Workala's question. I will just say I am not there yet for contracting completely out to a third party. I am very much interested in looking as the hybrid that we previously had. It was mentioned that we were starting to see uptick in, Councilman Sanders, please correct me if I'm wrong, we started to see a little bit up in the tick for the during Mr. Gomez's time when it came to narrowing that gap, I guess, on the deficiency when it came to taxpayer general fund being transferred over to the golf course.
During that period, I will say that there was an increase in usership. I will also remind everyone there was also some significant maintenance issues that continued to come up. And so on the one hand, if we need to look at revenues versus expenditures, then the potential for revenue was seeing what I believe was a direct result of the pro being a good marketer for the course, knowing that getting the playership up gave him more opportunity to expose his other services that were available, including the merchandising. And as a result of that experience, we had more repeat players come in. And at the same time, we kept having maintenance related issues that came back to us or came up. As I said in that audience, it looked like they came up. I wasn't in for all the information the council actually had. I think there is, to me, we've got to find a way to get the playership up to around 21,000 rounds a year to start getting it on that curve for a 5-year completion. How we go about doing that and how quickly that occurs is something we're going to have to monitor. But that being said, if it comes to the, I am not of the opinion we need to consider selling a course or even contracting it out to a third party. I believe we have more control over the quality of the experience and more control over the future improvements around that course when we maintain control.
Thank you. Sorry. Well, I guess this kind of brings back, this is why I think we needed a golf advisory committee to help start answering these questions and bringing in the public input, but also bringing in, I know during that special city council meeting, we had golf round numbers given to us, and we can see that there was a trend going up. I know there were talks about the, I'll say the, I don't want to say validity, but the accuracy where it comes, but we could see a trend coming up, and now we see a dip. So from what I'm understanding is that we had somewhat of a success with this hybrid model, and yet we had deferred maintenance going on. And I think for me, this is kind of where I would like to dive into, is looking at that hybrid model going back to the contract. Because again, you can raise the fees all you want, and I understand we have to keep up with that, but I also hear Councilman Sanders, your concern of, well, if we're going to keep raising fees and raising fees and raising fees, are we going to start then losing our golf rounds, which then comes into our revenue? But I also understand the concern of that we do have to keep up with the rates because there's associated costs and everything gets expensive. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I would like to look into this hybrid and figure out what was really the breakdown. Why can't we look into something where we are contracting out for a golf pro to have the incentives? We don't have a city staff or a city as a city employee that we have to pay the fringe, and now we're looking into the issues, I shouldn't say issues, the boundaries of, you know, merchandise selling or golf fittings or any of that lessons of that nature I feel like it's kind of coming back full circle from when this whole started. I think there were some advocates that were bringing this to attention, and I'm worried that we have come back full circle, because again, are we going to go with a full control city on it where, yeah, I think I'll just set up. I would like to look more into the contracting side.
Members of the council, let me give you a quick reminder. The action item before us is a deliberation and discussion regarding the golf course staffing structure and operational budget. This item is before us because of the obvious lead times involved in acquiring, no matter what path the council decides to go, and getting the services available currently at the course to be at least as good after April 20th as it is now. But for the purpose of our action item tonight, is there any further deliberation on the staffing structure and operational budget? And if there is there a motion out there in our future?
Council President.
Councilman Harjo.
You are right. Our action item reads regarding golf course staffing structure and operational budget. But I maintain that we make one choice today, and it opens the cone of uncertainty of what the next steps are. This implies, behind this one line of verbiage, that we could be bound to taking on the retail front ourselves. In multiple instances, it's been said that the course needs to, the city needs to take full control of the course, and that equals the city taking on the retail front. And I am going to be against that. I don't think it's worthy of us just shooting everything down from that proposal in one fell swoop. We need more dialogue on this. We also need our chief administrator, because he and his staff are going to be the ones that execute what the council's decision are. And even so much in the golf ops manager and split role approach before, there were deviations from what the presentation was and what the council agreed to at that point. And I can't say that I was super pleased about some of those things, but I also have to recognize that, like, that decision is out of my hands as a council person, authority over city staff. So all of that to be said, there's more than just approving the course staffing structure and operational budget, because that opens us up to potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars of expense to support this one action item.
Is there any further discussion? What is the intent of the council?
Council President,
Councilman Harjo.
I would like to make a motion to table this for a brief period of time until we can set a date that we can have a further workshop on the topic to flesh out these concepts, and perhaps even as a council, each of us bring our proposal recommendations. We discuss those in open forum and work towards some common solution that utilizes the best of all of our ideas. So I'll make that motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Council President.
Councilman McCarthy.
Councilman Harjo, for clarification, are you putting a date to that motion, or can you?
Council President.
Councilman Harjo.
I'm certainly not opposed to putting a date on it. Understanding that staff time is going to be limited over the next couple of weeks, especially here. And this relies very heavily on city staff. I'd entertain amending my motion to set a date for either the following council meeting, that we can bring this back as a table until then and bring this back, or create a special meeting of workshop style that we can address this. I'm open to either possibility.
Council President.
Councilman McCarthy.
Well, I appreciate that, Councilman Harjo, for that. I know we're coming up on a deadline. I don't want to see this get kicked down the road. The can get kicked down, but I don't. It's a tough. While we go through to try and flesh this out in a workshop, is there a way that we can, I guess I would be asked the council, I know there's a motion, but is there a way to help pass this information on to the golf course and the users so that we are trying to somewhat, I don't want to say somewhat, to help with this transition, I will say.
Council President.
Councilman Harjo.
Councilman McCarthy, perhaps our opportunity is with the formation of the Golf Advisory Committee, like in conjunction with that posting that City of Mountain Home is working towards what your 2026 and beyond golf season looks like, and what services will be provided and what may be on temporary hiatus. And I think we have an opportunity to communicate that with that mechanism.
Council President.
Councilwoman Workla.
Councilman Harjo, brilliant. Can you add that to your motion?
I would like to add that to my motion.
Councilman Harjo, would
Sorry.
you like to amend your motion?
I would like to amend my motion. Sorry, Amber and Tiff. I know this motion is messy, so I will start from the beginning so you don't have to. I will make a motion to table action item number 5 until the next council meeting, while also communicating to the golfers using the same mechanism as recruitment for the Golf Advisory Committee, that the city is actively working on solutions and business plans for 26 and beyond.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I will just note for the council members that we have already asked that city staff, and they've promised, or they believe it is feasible, I'll leave it that way, to have the application and the announcement for positions for that advisory board by the 9th. If there could be a further discussion, I may touch on this on finer points. If you want to have a workshop, which right now looks like the direction you're leaning, having it before our next council meeting, if we're going to take an action on it at the meeting on the 14th, it'll be, of April. I want to look at a date before that so that you can glean all the things we want to keep and get rid of the stuff we don't, and have a presentation that will reflect our best efforts.
Council President.
Councilman Workla.
Tiffany, can we add that to our workshop, LID 1/2 workshop on April 3rd?
Councilman Workla.
As a separate item?
I'm
like
going
a separate
to ask,
workshop?
I'm going to ask for clarity purposes. Are you suggesting that we extend the discussion and put a second item on the LID meeting for?
Oh my gosh, Decker.
I'm just making sure I understand what you're asking. And then I'm going to ask if you got your camping gear handy.
I'm asking to have 2 workshops that day. One will be at 9 o'clock for LID 2. And then the second workshop in regards to the golf course, pick a time that same day too. Since Councilman Sanders, you're already requesting to take that time off from work, I would hate to pull another Friday from your job. So I'm trying to get it all in when you already have that day off.
Okay, let's do this. Council members, let's go ahead with this motion. We have a motion and a second. Let's get that squared away, and then we can get into final comments and maybe have a further deliberation on a request for a special meeting. So, members of the council, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Councilman Workala.
Aye.
Councilman McCarthy.
Aye.
Councilman Harjo.
Aye.
Councilman Sanders votes aye. Moving down to ordinance. Action item, ordinance 1815, amending the following sections, 9-4-2, quote, definitions, unquote, 9-4-3, by amending the parks impact fee, adding Elmore County service area and EMS impact fee to the table of fees, 9-4-4, specifying payment procedures, 9-4-10B, by adding the additions of refund procedures, and 9-4-16, adopting the state code residency provisions and setting the parks impact fee.
Council President.
Councilman Harjo.
I make a motion to allow the ordinance to be read by title for its one and only reading tonight.
It's third reading,
So, that's
third and final reading.
for its third and final reading.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We have a
Second.
motion, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? We'll call for the question. Councilman Harjo.
Aye.
Councilwoman Workala. My lips.
Aye.
Councilman McCarthy.
Aye.
Councilman Sanders votes aye. Will you please read by title and whatever else you need to, the ordinance?
Ordinance 1815, an ordinance of the City of Mountain Home, Idaho, amending sections of the Mountain Home Development Impact Fee City Code as follows. Amending section 9-42, definitions by changing the definitions of various terms in that section, amending section 9-4-3 by amending the Parks Impact Fee, adding an Elmore County service area and adding Elmore County Emergency Medical Service Impact Fee to the table of fees, amending section 9-4-4 by specifying payment procedures for fees pursuant to intergovernmental agreement, amending section 9-410B by the addition of refund procedures for the amounts paid to another governmental entity pursuant to the intergovernmental agreement, amending section 9-4-16 by adopting state code residence provisions and specifying the city's membership of a joint development impact advisory committee, providing and repealing all servability codifications and an effective date.
Council, you have heard the ordinance read. Do you wish it to pass? Councilwoman Workala.
Aye.
Councilman Harjo.
Aye.
Councilman McCarthy.
Aye.
Councilman Sanders. Aye. Moving down to final comments. I have one. If we're going to add the golf course discussion to our Friday meeting, I anticipate it lasting up through lunch. So I'm going to make the bold move right now and say, if we do this, I'll buy lunch.
Council President.
Councilman Harjo.
I'll chip in on that.
Any other comments?
Council President,
Councilwoman Workala.
you're too kind. So are we thinking about like 1 o'clock or for the second workshop? Second separate workshop, to clarify.
I will poll the members present.
Council President.
Councilman McCarthy.
I think any time would be, can move. I guess my ask is value the public's input, and I think when we're setting these times, if it allows, if we can set something so a time that the public can join without having to take time off or make arrangements that, I'm all for that much more. So, but to that, I will leave to the council for whatever time we want to set up there.
Council President.
Councilman Harjo.
I don't mind Jenny's suggestion, Councilwoman Worklow's suggestion, 1 p.m. Be just fine.
Then we will make a recommendation to the mayor that the staff add a new separate special council meeting beginning at 1 p.m. on the 3rd, with the topic of discussion being the operations and staffing of the golf course. Any other final comments?
Council President.
Councilman McCarthy.
Chris, just a quick question for you. Have we heard back from Keller yet regarding seems going to be the word of the month workshop for wastewater and water?
We have not heard that.
Okay.
I have addressed it with them, and they're working their schedules, and they're making sure that they have everything all ducks in a row before they commit. I am active.
Do we have a timeline when what they're anticipating, like second half of April or?
We can put it on the 3rd, right? It'll be second half of April.
Okay.
That's my anticipation.
Perfect. You're gonna have a lunch and a dinner.
It will be, yeah, I anticipate it'll be. Chris, shut up.
Okay.
I know,
Thank
right?
you. Last I guess I would ask this council for our next regular city council meeting, if they entertain the idea of an agenda item for discussion of I'll say audio recording or video recording of committees, since it seems that we are starting to get into the world of adding more committees. So, yeah, I just wanted to bring that to see if there's any appetite for adding a discussion for that for the next regular city council meeting.
Council President.
Councilman Harjo.
I mean, it's an interesting concept. There's some challenges in some of them, I think. I think that implies that all of those committee meetings happen probably in this room going forward, so we don't have to go out for further expense in equipment. I'd be willing to hear it. Yeah.
I too would be in support. So with 3 of us, I will send a note to the mayor asking that be added to the agenda for the next meeting. On a final note for me, I want to thank everyone for bearing with me. It's my first time to actually try to run a council meeting and fairly early in my tenure. And I am appreciative of your maintenance of decorum and of all my colleagues. And you may take all your comments and file them with the large container in the back with the white liner. Hearing nothing else for the good order, we are adjourned.